Also, I'd like to say hello to all the participants out there in the room, and thank you very much for joining us. Over the next 5 minutes, obviously, we'll have different people joining us from all over the United Kingdom and Ireland as well. And we should have quite a few participants tonight. Up front, Eric, I'd just like to say, once again, thanks for joining us, mate. You are a person who's yourself have been out on a working holiday visa to Australia.
Yes, I did. Like that's been like quite a few years ago, I have to say. But I did go in 2002 after I finished my university degree, and I didn't really want to go working straight away. So I sort of decided to pick my bag and go. And obviously wanted to go to Australia. I was in sort of like kind of land, very iconic, very sort of like different, sunny, far away. So off I went and didn't really plan anything beforehand apart from buying a ticket and see what happened. So I just arrived in Sydney and walked off the plane, stepped into a cab, and I'd say just like, right, take me to King's Cross. And so I went, and it turned out to be absolutely amazing. Just like one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It's just been so much fun, met so many people. Obviously stayed for 12 months. I'd stayed my visa. And yeah, just like, I traveled quite a bit, but also worked quite a bit. Started working in Sydney straight away. Wasn't too hard to find a job, thank God, but I did go through a couple of agencies and I got some help finding a decent position. And then traveled around and yeah, like, the only thing I really regret is by then they didn't have the option to extend to the second year where you could work on a farm and
Mm.
like get a longer sort of like permit to remain in the country. So I actually had to leave, and I would have loved to stay for another year or so to travel more and work more, because it's just such a big country and there's so much to see. It's
It
absolutely
is.
amazing. You'll never get bored.
No, it's a massive country, actually. I think it
Yeah,
takes some 5 hours to travel from one side to the other on a plane. So,
yeah, yeah.
I don't know how you put that into Europe, maybe from London to Russia or something like that. I'm not too sure, but
Well, yeah. Like, look, I'm from a small country. I'm from Holland, from the Netherlands, where you just like travel 2 hours and you're out of the country, and it's just to go to Australia where you travel 4 hours and there's not even like a single piece of you know civilization really, only outback or something like that. It's just extraordinary. Really great experience.
yeah, well, obviously, I'm Australian. I love the country that I come from. I love this country too, by the way, and I've got to throw that out there. So when you did the working holiday visa, did
Yeah.
you, what sort of things were you looking for to get out of the working holiday? What were you trying to achieve?
Um, Look, basically for me, it was just a year off after like I've been, done high school and university all in one go, and I just wanted to have a break before I just was going, back to back to a life of careers and responsibilities. So I just wanted to have a year of like fun and basically work to fund my travels and stay as long as I could be, because I didn't have that much time before I went to save up a lot of money. So I went with like, a decent amount of money, but it could only last me for a couple of months. So I had to work to kind of pay for the rest of the trip. So that was really my motivation. But I've met heaps of people on the way that were really more serious about their work in Australia and really were investing in a career, either to stay on in Australia, to actually build up a life over there, or to get like experience along the way that would be beneficial when they were going back to the UK or any other country where they came from. So for me, it was more to fund my trip really, which was absolutely fine.
Yeah, I totally agree with you about the getting the experience in Australia. There's plenty of companies and organisations out there that are willing to look at people with the skill sets,
Yep,
university degree backgrounds, for
yep,
instance, out of the United Kingdom, to take them on
yep.
as participants in the workplace. If nothing more than to gain experience, I think it's a fantastic way of doing career development and personal growth. Certainly. So.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, and it really opens up your eye how much there is available in Australia. Once you actually travel around, you get a better understanding of the jobs that you can do and the money that you get as well for it, and also the requirements that the Australian sort of government would put on a certain like jobs or skill sets and stuff like that. So it's really good to get a feel like which city really appeals to you, which part of Australia you feel most comfortable with. I spent lots of time in Sydney, but the more I got to travel, the more I almost started to regret that I didn't go further to start with. Because there were so many other great places where you could work as well, and even like the smaller towns or maybe more I don't know, just on the West Coast, for example. Yeah, it just really you really need some time to get sort of an idea of how how the country works and all the places that you can go to before you can really settle down, make a decision. That's where I want to spend the rest of the next 5 years or so.
Yes. Look, there's a question that's come through on the chat room, and it's directed straight at you, Eric. It's would you suggest looking for work while in England, or wait until that person gets
Yeah,
over
all right.
to
Yeah, I can see the
Australia?
question. I think that's a really good question. I think it really depends on what you want to do in Australia. So if you're really intending to go to Australia to kind of settle there and live there for a few years, and you really want to build your career, you probably want to start looking around already whilst you're in the UK and get to know the right agencies or the right people to talk to whilst you're there, or even some companies I know do interviews already in the UK before you actually get over there. So
Mm.
if you're there to really only to travel, I probably wouldn't bother too much. I probably would go to Australia and make sure you got a couple of weeks planned out, maybe do a tour to start with or something like that, and then start to focus on which area you want to work in, which city you want to be at for a while, where you feel happy to settle down, and then find a job. I don't know, I haven't been for a few years, but by the time I was traveling, it wasn't that hard to find a backpacker job in Australia.
No, we actually cover that off shortly in one of the presentation slides as well, about
Yeah,
some excellent sources of information about how people can find a job,
yeah,
and also what skill set they should be looking into before they apply. But the Lorna having a degree in psychology
yeah.
will work very, very well for you, I'd suggest, Lorna, and I wish
There's a
you
lot of
the
work
best
to
of
do in Australia, I'd say.
Are you saying that we've got issues? Are you saying that? Of course we've got issues. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, just one sec. Got a cough. Apologies for that. Eric, Gapyear.com. Tell us a little bit about Gapyear.com and what it does for people in the marketplace.
Yeah, sure. So we basically have a website which is obviously called gapyear.com, which really focuses on people that want to just go away, go traveling and travel, but also do something a bit more sort of meaningful, either that be working overseas or volunteering or some sort of independent travel where, just it's not only your average sort of flop and drop holiday, but it is for people that want to kind of pack their bag and explore the world and do something whilst they're over there. And just the website is really designed for people to be informed of all the things that are possible, not only in Australia but pretty much anywhere in the world. Obviously, Australia is one of the more popular countries, let's say, for a good reason. But yeah, it's really to get a grip on what's out there, what you can do, and how to make the most of your time. I mean, you don't get that much time in your life to travel around and have that experience. So if you do it, you better make sure that you really get the most out of it, so to say.
Yes.
And in addition to that, we also offer the whole booking facilities. We just people can research, and then when they're ready to kind of speak to a consultant about how to get everything done, how to get everything organized, what's available, then we also cater for that sort of inquiry.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, and we'll move on to the presentation shortly, Eric. But you were mentioning to me before that you do have some some packages that you put together, and one of those is where people can be like a concierge type service, where people, if they're in trouble
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. That's correct. We're sort of trying to sort of um, being aware that people just don't always want to have everything set in stone before they go traveling, because it always kind of sort of changes whilst you're on the road. You meet other people, plans change, itineraries change, flights change. So we offer this sort of service that we have somebody that they can call back or get in touch with over email whilst they're traveling to amend their itineraries, to assist with flight changes or to assist with booking a different tour or adding on some sort of accommodation somewhere else, or so. And it's also sort of security that whilst you're traveling, there's somebody else there that can actually assist you with all your travel needs, so to say. So it's an extra service that we provide for free, just to
it's a free
make
service.
people feel more comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. No
Yeah.
worries at all. All right. Well, thank you very much for that.
Right.
Might kick off with our presentation if that's okay. Um, So for everyone else in the room, and hopefully sitting home and relaxing, we've got a few more people obviously coming into the room, but this presentation tonight is actually being recorded. It'll only be the presentation that you see here will be recorded and put up online on YouTube immediately after this webinar here tonight as well. And it'll only be for the presentation slides, just to let you know. So we'll keep and maintain privacy and confidentiality throughout. Of course, any of the information that you receive here tonight, it's always well worth getting in contact with the professionals that are in the room. Of course, gapyear.com, and we'll put up their details a little bit later in one of the slides. Please feel free to get in contact with Eric and his team over at gapyear.com. You'll recognise the brand gapyear.com. It's one of the most famous gap year companies in the world, and it's been around for quite a while as well. Obviously revamped, got a fantastic logo. I love the logo, Eric. And of course a fantastic, and of course a fantastic company as well. So for those people travelling down under, welcome here tonight. The information, so we're here to help, and as you will see, there's plenty of professionals in the room. Everyone from John Adams from Immigration to Oz, from PSS, who are an international removalist company, do excess baggage and can look after you in relation to any excess baggage that you need. These webinars we run about once a month, and you can expect them to run either the first Tuesday or Wednesday of the month, and can be found on the trainforgap.com website. It's just free to register, and of course invite your friends along as well. And we're looking at working with gapyear.com even further to put some package deals together for those people who participate in these gapinars or webinars as well. So keep an eye out for that, and keep abreast of everything that you need, and contact the professionals who can provide you with the services that you're looking for as well. And that's from start to finish. So the working holiday visa, and I'm quite lucky tonight that I do have John Adams from Immigration to Oz in the room. He's an Australian registered migration agent. And I'm not here to give advice in relation to working holiday visas, but just simply to let you know that the working holiday visa, it's called a subclass 417, is valid for those people from the United Kingdom if you meet the requirements of such things as age, being at least 18 but not yet 31 years of age, and do not have a dependent child. Have a passport from an eligible country, and of course the United Kingdom being one of those, and those countries that are located up above specify. And I've also included in there, have sufficient funds, and I've put around $5,000. When it comes time to actually completing an application, the Australian government will be looking for some sort of evidence as to your financial viability to support or sustain yourself whilst in Australia. In the second year, and if you choose to undertake a second year working holiday visa, it is available to you. You must have undertaken work for a minimum of 3 months or 88 days in total in a specified field or industry in a designated region. Now, some of those fields are things like the metal and mining industry, and you might be working out of Alice Springs, for instance, or you might be working in the agricultural sector out of Broken Hill or one of those other country regions that are contained in the definition of a region under the Act. Look, the migration agents are the best people who can give you the information about what it is that's valid and not valid. And there are quite a few things that you should be looking for if you are going to apply for a second year holiday visa. Number one, and I'm sure John Adams will agree with me on this, would be that those people who get paid in cash and wish to apply for a second year, it's very, very difficult to tell the Australian government that I was paid in cash and I was working on a farm picking fruit. But I was working there, because the burden of proof for where you're working and for how many days you're working there is directly onto you. So I'd suggest you keep a diary and keep your wage slips handy, and also keep and potentially a letter from your employers that you've and for people that you've met along the way, so that you can make that information freely available to the Department of Immigration should the need arise. So how to apply, how to get a working holiday visa? Well, you can send an email over to us at info@trainforgap.com, and or you can talk directly with a migration agent, Immigration to Oz, and as I said, John Adams is in the room here tonight with us. But we're more than happy to pass your details over to those people. Of course, they will look at a whole bunch of things for you in relation to your working holiday visa. and give you some further advice as to your aspirations. Maybe it's not a second year working holiday visa. Maybe after you've finished traveling through gapyear.com, you may wish to look at the opportunity to migrate on a more permanent type basis or get some type of employer nomination whilst you're there. People like Immigration Oz are the only qualified people to give you that advice, and we would always direct you in that position. Finding a job in Australia, I think Eric would agree here that post notes in hostels are probably one of the more famous ways of getting a job or finding a job. So when you get to places like Sydney and you go to some of the more famous hostels like GetUp, I think GetUp's is one of the largest sellers of beer in the Southern Hemisphere, believe it or not, as a backpacker hostel. But you'll find that there's heaps of notes, and of course this is a pathway well worn that backpackers or working holiday gap year people are going down. There's heaps of people who've been there before, and they're more than happy to share their wisdom and information. As well as that, you'll find information about your hostels and the likes through gapyear.com. Recruitment firms or agencies, as what Eric's referred to those before, is where he found his jobs. But here's a few for you: Skilled Engineering and Hayes Recruitment, which is obviously a world famous recruitment company. But there's more specific websites that you can have a look at: career1.com and seek.com. Don't be misguided. I think seek.com advertise themselves as the #1 employment website for Australia, whereas in fact, I think you'll find career1.com has got more reach. They certainly, in the regional rural areas, you'll find Career One being the more prevalent of the employer websites or the jobs websites. And of course, then we have word of mouth, which is always good, as I said before, when you're in a hostel or you're out the road talking to different people. They will always look after the friendly tourists. All you need to do is say good day to anybody, ask them if they know where there is any jobs, and I'm sure you'll come up with the right answer that you're looking for as well. So, so that's the best thing I can tell you. Now, one of the last ones is this jobsearch.gov.au Harvest Trail. I'll just quickly digress for the presentation and show you what the Harvest Guide looks like. The Harvest Guide, it's the 11th edition, it's just been put out now. It's going to be freely available for people to download from here, and we'll also place this up on our websites after the webinar tonight as well. But what the Harvest Guide does, it gives you free information about where and what harvest periods are taking place, and where's the best place to shift to. You know, if you want to go and pick grapes, for instance, they're saying go to Griffith at this time of year in February and March, and April and May is great for picking cotton in Dubbo, for instance. It gives you details of all of the local details for every one of these country towns. But don't forget, gapyear.com is there to also provide you with additional information and book side travels and trips for you to get to and from. Or maybe you want to do a tour of the area as well. So you go out there, work, do the Harvest Trail, and whilst you're there, get gapyear.com to help you along. Skills and courses. So what we've said is that, and where Train for Gap really does come into its own, is we look after people's skills and courses and their skills assessments and employability factors, really. Some of the short courses that we run are the RSA, which is the Responsible Service of Alcohol, which covers off most states and territories within Australia. It's worthwhile checking with us which RSA license you will require prior to going to Australia. And of course, yes, you could do it when you get there, but for most people who are on a gap year, they really want to put themselves in a position where they can hit the ground running. And that's what gapyear.com and Train for Gap are trying to do for the marketplace, is to allow you to hit the ground running in a big way. You know, if you're first to market, you've already been pre-qualified by an Australian company in the United Kingdom before you go, then by all means, you can just walk into any hotel or licensed premises and apply for a job, and you don't have to wait around. RSG is the Responsible Service of Gambling, and otherwise known as Responsible Gambling Services in other states and territories as well. The reason why doing this short course is that a lot of the licensed premises now, through many of the states, have poker machines and TAB or betting facilities such as Ladbrokes equivalency. Those organisations, you are required to have a Responsible Service of Gambling licence, which is issued by us, Train for Gap, prior to you leaving. It's about a 4-hour course. It's nothing too onerous, and you could either do that with us here in the south, or you can do it face to face face to face, or you can do it online as well. We do offer the online courses. The white card course is another course that we offer. It's a short course for any of those people who want to do any hand or labour work. The white card course, general safety course in construction, is this one, and it allows you to gain access to any construction site. It's equivalent to a CSCS card here in the United Kingdom. And of course, if we move on to more career-orientated skills assessments, then we look at anything in the vocational education and training sector. So, for instance, if you're a carpenter or an electrician, or you may be a project manager or a human resource manager, just graduated out of college, and you're looking for that additional advice or recognition for your qualification, then we're able to assist you in all of those facets. And of course, we match our skill sets with your skills assessment to people like John Adams from Immigration Oz, who can then provide you with further visa advice. And it's always the way that in a couple of years' time, after you've finished your gap year, I'm sure you'll be looking to go back to Australia or go back to New Zealand and be looking for a more permanent type visa application as well. So that's enough from me for my side of things. I'm going to hand over to Eric now, and at the conclusion of this, we'll take any questions as well. So I'll just hand over to you, Eric.
All right, thanks for that. Yeah, no, that was great information, really. I think just joining in, like what you just said, like when I went to Australia, I just didn't have any of those certificates, and I really think like working hospitality, for example, as a backpacker is a great job to do for at least a few months or so. So we really recommend to do one of those certificates first before you go. It's just so easy. You don't have to worry about it whilst you're there, and you can just straight away just walk into a job if you really wanted to. Anyways, on to traveling to Australia. I just thought I put some information together about how to get there to start with. Most people that I know probably want to travel a bit more outside of Australia only before they get there, or after they get there, or just make that part of a bigger itinerary. There's sort of three different ways how you can fly to Australia. The most extensive way would be to buy a round the world ticket, which obviously includes Australia, but would actually take you just really literally around the world. Often it goes, through Asia, to Australia, through the Pacific, back through the US, but it can also, as you see in the first sort of map over there, can go through Australia, South Africa, South America. So it's really up to you. That's more like sort of the classic sort of travel kind of package. Some people want to focus only on Australia or New Zealand, then you could probably consider a multi-stop flight where you actually buy your domestic flights as well. So you would fly to Australia, but you would also just connect in Australia through a few different cities. So you just fly into, for example, Sydney, and then a couple of months later you will fly to Melbourne, fly to Perth, fly to Cairns, and maybe to Auckland or Christchurch, and you fly back to London. If that's what you want to do, you probably, and you really get quite organized, it's probably a good option for you, because you probably save a bit of money by buying everything beforehand, and get a bit of a discount on that ticket. To be honest, most people will probably see how they go, and probably haven't really kind of fixed their ideas really of where they want to be at what particular time or who they're going to meet. So then in that kind of way, you're probably better off just buying a return flight to any of the major gateways in Australia. Loads of airlines fly to Australia from the UK, so you can choose obviously between Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne, but they also fly to Cairns, Adelaide, Perth, and even the Gold Coast if you like. So that's for that. Now you need to know, like you probably know anyway, that no airline from the UK flies directly to Australia. They all have to stop over. If you buy a direct flight to Australia, you can just stay on the plane whilst they refuel in Singapore, and then a couple of hours later fly on to Australia. It is a really long flight. If you have the time, I would surely recommend to spend a bit of time in between. Either that be a city break where you spend a few days exploring one of the stopover cities. So that can either be fly with one of the Middle Eastern airlines, be Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or Doha. If you fly with the Asian airlines or with like Qantas or British Airways, you probably end up in Singapore or in Bangkok or in Hong Kong. If you have loads of time and you really want to do a bit of Southeast Asia as well, you can actually consider buying a ticket with a surface option, as they call it. So you fly into Singapore and then you make your own way to, for example, Bangkok, where you pick up your flight to Australia again, or you fly into Shanghai, and make your own way overland to Hong Kong, and there you just step on the plane and go on to Australia. It's quite a nice way of spending maybe a couple of weeks in one of these countries, exploring the Asian culture a bit before you go into Australia. You can do the same thing actually in Australia as well. So loads of airlines will actually allow you to fly into one city into Australia and fly out from another one. So if you're traveling, for example, the East Coast, you could buy a ticket that flies you into Sydney, and then you make your own way to Cairns, and then from Cairns you step on the plane and fly back to the UK again. Or you can combine that with like even New Zealand, as you see at the bottom, there's an option to fly into Auckland, travel down to Christchurch yourself, fly to Christchurch to Sydney, and then from Sydney you make your own way to Cairns, and from Cairns fly out again. So you're better off speaking to one of the agents to get more information. But there's like loads of possibilities if you're interested in doing this. Then a bit more specific, whilst you're there, if you want to travel around Australia, it's really quite easy. It's probably one of the safest countries, the most easy country to get around in, and which is really great. The quickest way would be to step on a flight. There's loads of little like big operators and smaller operators that fly around Australia. Obviously, Qantas and Virgin are sort of the most renowned, I suppose. But there's also heaps more budget airlines, I think, popping up over the years that like fly you to basically anywhere in Australia. They're not even too expensive. You can just buy a ticket online, or you can buy it through an agent, whatever you prefer. Buses is probably the cheapest way to get around, I think. Greyhound and AusExperience are one of those companies that like take people around, particularly the East Coast, for not too much money, where you kind of have a flexibility to hop on, hop off wherever you like. You can also go around by train. There's some iconic sort of famous trains running around Australia, like the Gun and Indian Pacific, for example, that kind of basically cross the continent from east to west and north to south. I haven't done it myself, but I've heard people doing it. Apparently, it's quite an amazing experience. You also have like local operators like CountryLink that would actually take you from the main cities to people. For example, if you go food picking, they will probably take you into the country to sort of the main cities over there. From there, you kind of sort of transfer to the smaller regions in Australia, as I'd say, or the more remote regions, I should say, maybe. Loads of people actually do travel around by car or by camper van, so you can pick those up anywhere in the major cities and drive it to another city, and then you stop along the way. Obviously, just like live this sort of like ideal life on the coast with a surfboard, and take your time and do whatever you want to do. So it's a nice way of doing it. Another thing, if I recommend, particularly if you're traveling by yourself, to join a tour. It's a great way to move around in Australia, because like the tours probably go from one point to another point, so it's not like you return to the same place where you started. But it's also a great way to meet other people if you go for 10 days or 14 days and you go actually through the outback, and you have like this real sort of adventure experience. You really sort of often bond as a group, and you have like lots of fun just around a campfire, or just like exploring or swimming or whatever you want to do. So if you want to meet some people and you want to see some more of the country without too much hassle, then definitely do a tour. I highly recommend it. Staying in Australia, pretty much the same as anywhere else in the world, I suppose. Hostels, hotels, everywhere available. Australia also does serviced apartments really quite well. Means like you pay probably a bit more, but you have a bit more kind of like facilities around you. You can do your washing, your dinner. Probably save a bit of money on always have to go out or socialize in the hostels. Even the bills can go up quite a bit, because in the evening there's always a bit of a boozy thing going on. But it's lots of fun though. And if you stay a bit longer, so imagine you find a job somewhere, quite often you can find some shared housing. You can just rent a room in a house with some other backpackers, or even local Aussies that you can share a house with, and just live like a real Australian for a few months. Quite a good way of getting to know the real Australia, as I'd say. We do have starter kits as well. If you just it's similar to getting yourself ready before you go, getting a certificate, you can actually get everything sort of set up whilst you're there. So you just you have like these kits that include, as you can see there, your CV assistance, bank account setup, SIM card, Medicare, which is the Australian way of NHS, so to say. Text file, which you need to have, all these things that like kind of are the sort of the annoying bits that you have to do whilst you're there. You can actually buy that as a pack, including a couple of nights hotel, and sort it all out as soon as you arrive. So after 3, 4, 7 nights, you're actually ready to go, and don't have to worry about anything anymore. Just a bit more about getting around. So either you do like a set tour, or you just drive yourself, or you take a bus. Whatever you do in Australia, you must go visit and look around and experience the country. And you really need to take time for that, because as we said before, it's a bloody big country, and you really need like a decent amount of weeks to at least see one part of it quite well. So I thought I'd list a few popular sort of itineraries that people do when they're there. Most people either arrive in Sydney or Melbourne still with the plane. So like a lot of people stay for the first couple of days at least in that city. In Sydney, for example, like a lot of people do day tour to the Blue Mountains, which is a beautiful sort of national park just outside of Sydney. Hunter Valley, which is famous for the wines. You do a bit of wine tasting. Canberra is obviously the capital, which is like apparently, so I've been told, they couldn't choose between Sydney or Melbourne, so they created Canberra, and that's just now where the government is. And there's a couple of great sort of like museums and interesting stuff about Australian history you can visit. Melbourne, obviously, Phillip Islands is where the penguins go on shore. Great Ocean Road is very famous. You can do a day trip there. Yarra Valley is also the wineries. Then the most popular itinerary by far, what everybody sort of does, the sort of must-do sort of like trek, is the East Coast. You can either do that from Cairns down to Sydney, or from Sydney up to Cairns, depending on the time of year. Obviously, you visit all the major places on the coast: Coffs Harbour, Byron Bay, the Gold Coast, the Sunshine Coast, Fraser Island, which is just the big sort of island in front of the coast there. You do lots of four-wheel driving. With Sundays is where you go sailing. And then Cairns has like loads of stuff on offer, as in like visit crocodiles in the wild, to the rainforest, to the Barrier Reef, of course, where you go snorkeling or diving. So you can't really leave Australia without doing the East Coast. It's sort of a must-do, really. The other ones are a bit more sort of like less traveled, or like chopped up in bits, so to say. But for example, the Red Centre, a lot of people fly either straight to Alice Springs, do the big Uluru or Ayers Rock, as they call it, and visit and fly back. But you can actually, I find it more fun to do the whole thing straight through the heart of Australia. So you start in either Melbourne or Adelaide. There's loads of great national parks along the way, with like really amazing wildlife and animals as well, of course. And then go all the way up to Darwin, which is probably the sort of like a real sense of the remoteness and the size of the country and the outback. Very, very cool to see. Then if you stay a bit longer, I really recommend the West Coast. It's sort of the road less traveled. Nonetheless, to me, it is the most beautiful part of Australia. You can travel to either from Perth to Darwin, or Darwin to Perth, can go either way. We'll cover the Kimberley, which is the most remote sort of region that's still left in Australia, and get a real sense of sort of this sort of kind of like lost in civilization in time or whatever. It's just a really incredible experience. And then there's also in WA a lot of sort of marine stuff you can explore. So you can swim with the dolphins, you can snorkel and see the really unspoiled sort of reefs at Ningaloo Reef. Very beautiful, and also a couple of really good national parks around. So that's to get some ideas what you can do. So what we offer, apart from all this information about like where to go in Australia, and like what to do, where to stay, like how to get a job, like who to speak to, when is the best time to go food packing, blah blah blah. We also do offer sort of set packages, which you might want to consider if you just don't want to have all the hassle and get it all done. So we have a sort of a standard package that we offer, which includes your return flight, your initial stay in the hotel, set up with all the sort of the compulsory sort of nitty gritty bits. And also includes like your travel insurance whilst you're there. And there's an option to upgrade, and we actually include the visa itself. We also include a Sydney to Cairns bus pass, which will take you along the East Coast, and you can do it at your own pace. And it also includes the sort of the must-dos, like you get a surfing lesson in Byron, you go past Fraser Island, Magnetic Island, and you do a tour up in Cairns to see a bit of the hinterland. So look, there's loads more we can do. It's just to give you a bit of a taste of Australia. If you want to know more, by all means, give us a call or send us an email. We'd be like more than happy to advise and to see what we can do, tailor make, or even just if you just have a few questions you're not sure about, then by all means, just drop us a line or give us a call. That's about it really for me.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric. That's terrific information. I'm looking at your list there, and I've got to say, there's not actually too many places along that list that I haven't been.
Oh, good. Oh, you've been around then.
Yeah, I've been all around Australia. So,
yeah. Very good.
Yeah, oh, you meant Australia, of course. Yeah, I've been around. But I was actually in Darwin last year, in June of last year. So I think is one of the most perfect times to go to Darwin, although they do get the winds come up. I always recommend to people who are looking to do some of these trips from one place to another. For instance, going from Sydney all the way through to Cairns. Look at the weather conditions along the way, and you can get fairly predictable about what's happening so far as the wind, how warm it's going to be, and when it's a good time to move from the north part of Australia to the southern part of Australia as well. So um, I think there's plenty of websites out there who can provide that information. But yeah, it's a fantastic place. Love every part of it,
Yeah,
every
me
single
too.
part. Well, except for Collingwood. I've never liked Collingwood, but that's just me. That's just me. So, so yeah, listen, thank you very much for that, Eric. That was really informative. I'm going to turn this over.